All right, it's time to start looking at the economic forecast that we have coming up. So let's move to the next segment. We're going to have Chris Slight and Alexander Marquette talking to us about the economic focus. Okay, so joining us from a remote location where they're safe and sound from the traveling is Chris Slight and Alexander Marquette. So Chris Slight, let me introduce you first, sir. Welcome, it's great to have you with us. Great. Let me introduce you, sir. Chris Slight, Managing Director of Off-Highway Research. Chris Slight is recognized as one of the world's leading authorities on global construction equipment markets. Since joining KHL Group in 1997, he's edited two of the world's leading magazines for the industry, International Construction and Construction Europe. Chris transferred to the market intelligence side of the business and is now working on forecasting and management consultancy business. He assumed the role of managing director of the business unit at the start of 2018, and we're really proud to have his knowledge and wisdom with us today. Also joining us is Alexander Marquette. Alexander, I will introduce you in more detail soon, but it's great that you're with us, and I'm really looking forward to your insights as well.
Thank you.
Great. Chris, I really would love for us to jump directly into your presentation. I know it's quite detailed, so I'd like to hand the floor over to you. Please take the floor.
Sure. Thank you very much, Malcolm, and thank you for the introduction. Let's jump straight into it then. So hopefully you're seeing my opening slide there. A quick tour of the global construction equipment industry. The rubric, and a lot of the viewers will be familiar with this. Everyone measures the market slightly differently. So when I talk about market volumes, these are the types of equipment that we cover. And the history of the industry, everyone will be familiar with the kind of cycles that we see in construction equipment. And from 2017 to 2019, globally, the industry performed extremely well. It hit a new peak, but obviously in this industry, when you get a peak, you have a downturn on the way. The way we would summarize that is it is a cyclical market, and that synchronized growth that we saw in major markets from 2016 to 2018 was very nice, but the market hit a peak, a very good one. A volume of about 1.1 million units, worth about 110 billion US dollars retail for those 2 years. But the market was always forecast to turn down in 2020. And of course, what we're seeing with COVID-19 is that the downturn is accelerating. So let's just dive into that, our forecast, and just unpick it a little bit. If you look at the global equipment market, previously, about this time last year, we were forecasting a decline this year of about 5%. So yes, the markets were going to turn down, but nothing really too alarming. In light of COVID-19, my team has been beavering away, doing a lot of research, doing a lot of interviews with the industry. And our revised forecast is now for a 16% decline this year. So, yeah, 16% is clearly worse than 5%, but looking at it, the volumes will still remain reasonable, and it's probably not as bad as many people would expect. But as ever, when you look at a global figure, it's very important to dive into it. And the situation that we have globally is you kind of have China and everywhere else. In China, obviously, COVID-19 hit there first. So it was the first country into lockdown, also the first one out of it. And as the Chinese government is apt to do in times of crisis, it's gone really very hard on stimulus. The main mechanism of this has been at a provincial level. The central government has allowed provincial governments to issue a lot more bonds, and with the stipulation that those bonds kind of have to be spent on things like infrastructure, agriculture, environmental protection. So fortunately, things which have a component of equipment sales to them. So instead of the peak in China just taking a gentle downturn this year, we're seeing quite a spike. about a 14% rise is what we think at the moment, although people who are familiar with China know that things can change week to week. So that is a very high level. Not as big as we saw in 2010, 2011, again, in response to stimulus following the global financial crisis, but a very, very good level for the Chinese market. The question about China, of course, is what happens after that, how long the stimulus goes on. At the moment, we only really expect the effects of that to be felt in the equipment market for this year, but it could be extended. The question then is how quickly it falls away. And obviously after the last peak, it fell away quite steeply, and there was a very painful period of about 5 years of falling demand and a lot of fallout in the industry from that. We don't expect it to be quite as bad this year, but clearly the market will fall, and it will probably take 3 or 4 years for that all to work its way out. So China is a huge market, by far the biggest construction equipment market in the world. So if you take China from the global picture, you get a very different graph to the one I just showed. If you look at the world excluding China, yes, it does look bad. Whereas again, a fairly gentle downturn was previously forecast. Now we're expecting sales in the rest of the world, excluding China, to be down about 26% this year. So clearly, that is a very, very big fall for the industry to have to cope with in the space of really a few months. It's clearly not as bad as we saw in 2008, 2009, when the market fell and stayed low. It's not going to fall to those levels, we don't think. And the other important thing is that we expect 2021 to be better than 2020. So again, not this sort of prolonged bumping along the bottom, more V-shaped, but clearly it's going to take a number of years to get back to recover from the fall that we've seen in the space of really 6 months this year. As you're all aware, you can't give a webinar these days without using the phrase new normal, so I have to do that contractually. The economic environment will be weak, clearly, and unemployment will rise. So what does that mean for this industry? One of the impacts we expect is on house building. You need private wealth, you need consumer confidence for house building to be buoyant. And in terms of the equipment industry, that could impact on the smaller equipment types, generally machines under about 10 tons. Non-residential building, clearly companies are in cost-cutting mode. Many people will be watching this from home, and many people will have been working from home since the spring. And so companies around the world are starting to think, hang on, why am I leasing this incredibly expensive city centre office in Paris or London or Amsterdam or Stockholm when my business carries on with a much lower cost base with people working from home? The other thing about companies being in cost-cutting mode is, of course, as well as the travel restrictions that are in place, we've found that we can work quite well talking to each other over video instead of jumping on planes. So travel budgets will be cut, and that's going to impact on travel, and it's also going to impact on construction that feeds into that. So the construction of things like offices, airports, hotels could be impacted. It depends very much what part of the equipment industry you're in, if that's a problem. Things like office construction, essentially building vertically, do not have a huge impact on earth-moving equipment, but if you're in the tower crane business, then that's probably something to be concerned about. And then infrastructure, we're reasonably optimistic about infrastructure. They're long projects, and although projects do occasionally get cancelled, generally they carry on even if someone goes bust or something like that. So these multi-year projects should be resilient and should be a useful source of sales for the construction equipment industry. The other thing that we're reasonably optimistic about is that it's public money generally which goes into infrastructure. And I think as governments around the world start thinking about stimulus, they're going to realize that there's an important role to play with infrastructure in creating jobs and helping get their economies up and moving. So we're reasonably optimistic about the infrastructure segment, and that is, of course, probably the most important segment, particularly if you're in the mid to large sized equipment. Just to take a slightly different look at this, What we've done this year is look at financial results from about 19 or 20 of the biggest international OEMs, so not the Chinese manufacturers, but the Caterpillar, Komatsu, John Deere, CNH kind of companies, and just aggregated all that and looked at their revenues. So again, it demonstrates very clearly the cycle in revenues and also the way that the profit cycles with the ups and downs of the industry. The downturn had clearly begun in Q4 before COVID-19 began to hit. And what we saw in Q1 and Q2 is, rather than maybe a bit of a seasonal uptick, Q1 was bad and Q2 was worse. Frankly, not as bad as I thought it would be. And if you kind of look across, it's still sort of within a normal range of the industry, although the downturn has been quite steep. I think the important thing here, and the point I would make, is that, you know, we're looking for signs of improvement. And that's something that we're going to be looking very carefully at the third quarter results, which are going to start coming out in just a few weeks. We are going to be hoping for an increase in revenues and hopefully profitability in the industry as well. So just a signal for something to look out for there. So just to change tack, I just want to have a few slides looking at Europe. Obviously, most of the viewers will have Europe as their main area of concern, and we see very mixed impacts here. Overall, a fairly steep drop, about just over 20% this year overall. So a big loss for the industry to have to swallow in 1 year. But, you know, if that does turn out to be the case, the volumes are bad but not terrible. We don't see a return to this kind of territory in 2009 and for the subsequent few years, when it fell a long way and really bumped along the bottom before things took off. So we are reasonably optimistic that the impacts on Europe won't be too bad. But again, you know, we talk about Europe as one market, and we know full well it's not. And if you look at the different countries, you see a very different range of impacts. The least worst we see as Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, down about 12%, and the Nordic region is also not too bad. Italy is worse, but not as bad as the European average of 22%. That's an interesting one because obviously Italy was hit very hard and very early by COVID-19, and it has had some of the worst impacts in terms of public health. But the point about Italy is that that was one of the markets in Europe which was on its way up going into this year, whereas most other markets had peaked and were heading down. So notwithstanding the impact of COVID-19, the underlying trend in Italy is very helpful. And then we move down the scale to countries which have had a heavier impact from COVID-19. Probably the worst, or we feel the worst, is the UK and Ireland, where we have had a serious impact. We have the infection rate picking up again, as several other European countries do. And we haven't had the best government response to it, I would say diplomatically. As you're all aware, in Europe, different machines are used for similar tasks depending on where you are in the world. So the impact on different product types is informed by which countries are up or down. There's a bit less of a spread in here because the high volume machines such as excavators, wheel loaders, are used fairly universally. So there are a few least worst ones like wheel loaders and mini excavators. And some of the worst hit areas like telescopic and handlers and backhoe loaders, that's obviously influenced by those machines being particularly popular in some of the countries which are worst hit by the infection and the lockdown. Just a quick word about the balance between production and sales. Production here is shown in the red columns and sales in grey. And historically, Europe has been a net exporter of equipment, with production moving ahead of sales. What we've seen in the last decade is that gap closing until last year, when it was more or less in balance. And the key factor there, we feel, is that a lot of the territories such as Africa and the Middle East, which were served from European factories, are now served from Chinese factories. So Europe has kind of lost that business to some extent as a manufacturing base. We unfortunately feel that will get worse in the current climate because of cost cutting and manufacturers looking at their global footprint. And indeed, this year, Hitachi has announced changes to the way it's going to use its facilities in Amsterdam. So more manufacturing will leave Europe and be repatriated to Japan. So that is an unfortunate point about a long-term trend that we see for the European industry. But in summary, the least worst markets, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and the Nordic region. And that does drive the product mix. So wheel loaders and mini excavators, not too bad. We do question whether there will be a continued flight of production for not just this year, but in years to come as manufacturers cut costs. And I'm kind of banned from mentioning the B word too much, but you do wonder what impact there will be on the UK and Ireland market, given that COVID-19 has had such an impact. Sales are down quite steeply. And at the end of this year, Brexit takes full effect, and what Brexit looks like, we still don't know. So that is a cause of concern and a source of uncertainty in our forecasting. So just to wrap it up, looking at the global picture, overall, as I said, volumes are not terrible, but where those volumes are is absolutely critical. And for this year and next, clearly it's going to be China. And then it's more in 22 to 24 that we see the volumes improving in the developed markets. So yes, there's China and there's everywhere else. The unfortunate thing about China is you have to be there to benefit. And even if you are there, it's mostly the indigenous OEMs which benefit. They account for about 75 to 80% of sales. But that would include the joint ventures like SDLG and the wholly owned Chinese brands like Caterpillar's SEM subsidiary. Other countries, depending on where you are, the downturn this year is going to be anywhere between 15 and 35%. There will be a sharp rebound in 2021, we forecast and we hope, and the volumes will be reasonable, or at least not as bad as last time around. The difficulty is, and I seem unable to give a presentation without using the word uncertainty, but it is absolutely uncertainty which we face. We don't know what COVID-19 is going to do next. We don't know what the lockdowns are going to be, and we don't know how good the policy response is going to be. So what we're looking for, what we feel will be the deciding factors, how this year will unfold. Yes, we are back to the new normal, but we're also facing a second wave of infections across Europe. And the question in economic terms is what that means in terms of lockdowns, to what extent businesses will be shut down. The medium-term outlook, there will be economic damage from COVID-19. It's a question of not so much how bad it will be, in fact, but will the policy response remain good? So far, it has been quite good, I would say. There's no playbook for this, so you can forgive your policymakers something. But in general, viable businesses have been supported, jobs have been supported. What we need now is large, long-term, by long-term, I mean 5 to 10 year stimulus. That was something which was probably lacking last time around. And we also need countries to resist the urge towards protectionism, which just shuts down trade and hurts everybody. And then the long-term thing, as I said, societal habits are changing. Even when we come out of COVID-19, I guess we'll be traveling less and video conferencing more. And what does that mean for construction? Instead of the physical having to be there mindset, a more virtual mindset. So is there less of a need in general worldwide for bricks and mortar? Possibly yes, but we're falling into the realms of philosophy here. So that's not really my forte. So with that, I'll end the formal presentation, and if there are any questions, I'd be very pleased to answer them.
Great. Thank you so much, Chris, for your presentation. A very sobering picture, but it's great to have the clarity on the situation. Anyway, so I'd like to invite Alexander Marquette, Vice President of CECE, into the conversation now. Alexander, thank you for being with us. And Alexander Marquette, Vice President of CECE, CEO of Group Metallic. And I would really love you to bring a manufacturing perspective to this, because Group Metallic designs and produces innovative public works machinery. You've got 4 factories currently, 2 in France, 1 in Germany, 1 in the UK. You've got 8 sales subsidiaries with 200 trusted network dealers. as someone who's creating excavators, wheel loaders, backhoes, could you give us your response to what Chris is saying? Could you tell us what your response is to all this information we've just downloaded?
Okay, thank you, Malcolm, for this presentation, and thank you, Chris, for your, as usual, sharp view. Your data, as always, are very much considered and appreciated in our industry. And we could just expect that better news sometimes would be welcome. Our global world and economy is like it is today. I will not pretend that my view will be universal, but how we perceive the coming years. No one knows how long it will take to get back to, in brackets, normal. And this term also has been taken by you, Chris, at different times in your presentation. You foresee about 4 years to recover the 18-19 activity in sales. We have all in all about also the same view, but as you said also, I mean, with this world of uncertainty and volatile conditions, we cannot foresee anyway a very sharp and steep return to the previous business that we were facing. And I think also that we have to take some care in our provisions, and we have to take some to be also safe in what we do foresee. What I try to impulse to our environment and to the company is that we cannot just wait. We have to act with what we know today, and we don't know much, but we know the relaunch plans that EU is establishing also with the countries on infrastructures, on the technologies. At the same time also, we don't have really a clear vision on how the UK will exit from, I would say, the couple Brexit and COVID, and also with their governmental aspects at the same time. Also, we can see, for example, the situation in France that does not help neither to have some clear vision when you see the standby situation of various job sites, when you see also the very little number of tenders going out today, even if the needs and if the decisions have been taken on these infrastructures. And then also we can see that there is some new elements like unpredicted fluctuations on some currencies that are also impacting our businesses and our global economy. Just few examples: the zloty in Poland has been rising on the past months of almost 10%. We can see also the impact of the USD today versus euro. Since 2, 3, 4 years, I don't think that it has been at this level and stable at this level. And also we can read and we can hear some kind of not very optimistic forecast evolutions for 2021 on the USD currency. For me and Mekalac as a company, we have to look ahead for sure, and despite of these chaotic surroundings. As Malcolm, you said, we are mainly present on the European continent and North America. These are our core and focus areas of businesses. Each country from the European continent has its own behavior of the situation and that we are currently facing. There are some positives and negatives for sure. And it's our challenge as a company to balance them. Since ever, our core business has always been the urban job sites. We keep bringing new products, innovations, and technologies to that segment. We keep being enthusiastic as the needs for these job sites are still there. And you have mentioned this also, Chris, and I remember last year when you made the economical presentation, as you do in each of the CECE Congresses, you were also foreseeing this downturn for 21, not for the same reasons, for sure. And also at this time, your view that was that the residential or the private investments were going towards the infrastructure investments. So somehow the recovery that you are foreseeing, or I would say, the stronger coming economy, also for the rejump of our world that you are foreseeing, and is also the same as the one we are foreseeing, because our major part of the business is also the infrastructure, the urban infrastructure, but the infrastructures. And I agree on that, and you are quite consistent on these aspects also along the years. And our view also is consistent on this position and on this vision. Needs are still there, needs for the urbanization, and so for the infrastructure developments linked to these urbanizations growing. Then there are also some markets where where the current situation is not impacting us too much, as we are still kind of newcomers, like, for example, North America, where we are still in building of a network and developing our presence in this country. So for us, even if the economical situation is tight, even if some manufacturers can see some downturns, us as Mecalac, as we are still very coming in player and still a small player in that market, for sure, we are not impacted too much. Just to finalize this first reaction on what you have presented, I mean, once again, we have to live with this exceptional situation, and it's like it is. So we have to adapt in front of these borders restrictions that are coming up every day. We have to adapt facing the day-to-day life restrictions also. So it's more on personal aspects, and we also have to adapt facing this global fear touching everyone, every industry, and every country.
Thank you very much for your comments, Alexander. It's really nice to have a manufacturer's perspective come in and talk about this. Look, we only have 2 minutes for questions as we're running a little behind, but we've had some questions come in, and I think they're interesting ones. So Gert Peters from Hyundai Construction Equipment has a question for Chris. The impact of COVID-19 crisis is a lot less than the financial crisis of 2008, 2009. What is your opinion for the underlying reason of this?
Yeah, very good question. I think the two different shocks have a very different nature. If we think back to what happened in 2008, 2009, that was actually brewing for a long time. It had its roots in the subprime crisis in the US in 2005. And it was, when it finally broke, it was a big systemic issue for the global financial community. And it took a long time for that to work out. COVID-19 is very much in the category of short, sharp shocks. Although we've been living through it for months, it's something that's happened very suddenly, and many of the effects have receded very suddenly. So it's kind of more in the category of natural disasters. I don't mean that glibly or flippantly, but that's really what it is. And when you see what happens with natural disasters, there's a very sudden disruption to business, but humanity adapts and humanity finds a way to get on with it.
And we had one other question for you, Chris, which came from Jorge in Spanish Manufacturers Association. Hi, Chris. What's your opinion about the impact in South America?
Well, it's not an area that we cover very deeply. What I read and what I understand about South America is it's very strange in that the incidences of COVID-19 are quite bad there, and it is having a big human impact, but it doesn't seem to be affecting economic activity and the kind of things that CECE members do, the equipment markets, perhaps as much as you would expect. So the short answer is I'm at a bit of a loss, and we'll have to see how it unfolds.
Gentlemen, we have to leave it there. Time has run out, but we really appreciate you both being here. Chris Slight, Alexander Marquette, thank you so much for joining CECE Congress 2020. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now we'll have a short announcement from our sponsors, and then we'll come back with another in-studio guest.
In industries where mistakes can be very costly, it's important to get things right first time. But when there are thousands of different option combinations, creating millions of buildable configurations, it becomes very hard to manage. Configit's patented virtual tabulation technology brings order to this complexity. Virtual tabulation compiles every possible configuration scenario and then compresses that data into a very small file so that it can be used by everyone on your team. Sales can create quotes quickly and accurately from practically anywhere. For manufacturing, service, and engineering, it means less costly mistakes, more efficient service, and faster time to market. Say goodbye to incorrect configurations and hello to virtual tabulation from Configit.
Great. So we're coming to the end of the day, but we do have an in-studio guest with us before we go to the conclusions, and it's Bengt Nilsson, CEO of Hammerglass. Bengt, welcome to the studio. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
You began your career in the marketing sector, actually, and you spent several years as a project manager at a marketing agency.
That's true.
And while you were there, you got in contact with a product called Equinova and its inventor to Bjorn Olsen.
Yes.
And in 2006, Equinova was renamed Hammerglass, and Bengt took over as CEO of the newly formed company. And today, Hammerglass Group has a turnover of 10 million euros and 60 people with subsidiaries in Norway, Denmark, Germany, and your operations are evenly distributed across the business areas of real estate, infrastructure, and automotive. So, what is Hammerglass? What do you have?
What is Hammerglass? I thought I'd start off by showing the frame that was used in the film. We'll start with that.
Yeah.
This is a model of the steel frame used in the film. It's called RABS, after the different tests that has been through. It consists of a steel frame, as you see, and of 2 panes of Hammerglass. Hammerglass is a special, uniquely coated polycarbonate, 300 times stronger than glass. Excuse me. The 12 millimeter inner pane here in the frame is bolted into the steel frame. So, and the steel frame itself is bolted into the grill brackets of the cabin. So it's instead of normal steel grills. It has been tested with full FOPS level 2 tests. It has been tested with 3 kilos of TNT
3 kilos,
3 kilos
of
of
TNT.
TNT
That's
at
enough to bring
3
down a building.
Absolutely, and at 3 meters range. So this will withstand anything that's thrown at the cabin.
Okay, so with what industries would need that level of protection? Now, would that be the mining industry,
The mining,
demolition?
yes, and not at least in quarries, road builds where there has been explosions, and there might be undetonated explosives in the storm masses.
Right.
So while handling them, they might go off.
Really, really interesting. We saw people hammering on glass in the videos. How do we know the glass survived?
Well, the inner pane, as I said, is a
Yeah.
12 millimeter Hammerglass.
Yep.
To protect that pane from the shrapnels of hammering, for instance, there is a sacrificial screen on the outside. So the sacrificial screen was the one taking the
beating.
the beating.
The beating.
And in fact, I brought it here. This is the same screen that was used.
This is the one.
The one. As you see, it's taken a lot of beating. And this is only a 4 millimeter Hammerglass. And it's supposed to take the beating from the stones and chips and windshield wipers, and it's supposed to be replaced once a year in tough environments. It's cheap, it's replaceable, it's easy to replace.
But not broken. I can attest that it's bumpy, but not broken.
Exactly.
Very good.
So this is for really tough environments.
Yeah.
But for more normal standard environments,
Yeah.
we will replace the normal screens with an 8 millimeter Hammerglass. So we have seen through the tests that these will endure anything due to the steel frame and everything. And I've brought a little surprise for you. I
Yes, I like surprises generally.
have here, this is what we normally would replace a normal standard glass in a cabin. Mounted just as the other glass, normal glass with glue.
Yeah.
And you're free to try to break it.
Oh, challenge accepted. Let me just unbutton my jacket here.
I'll try to hold it.
You hold it. Everybody standing back. Hammer of the gods. Here we go. Hammer time. Okay. I think I could do it if I had enough time. But with the time we have, let's see. Look at that. Just a few marks.
Yes.
Yep. No cracks, just a few marks.
So this is what we would use as a replacement glass.
So obviously this product is all about, the benefit of this product is all about safety.
Yes, it is.
And
And of course, economic as well, because you don't want the downtime cost when the machine stands still, and the cost of the broken glass.
Yep.
And of course, the safety of the driver.
You're also in the infrastructure area. So how does Hammerglass products fit into that infrastructure sector? I don't really.
We use Hammerglass for sound walls, for bridges, for train stations, and of course for bus shelters.
Bus shelters, yeah.
So we're in fact launching our own unbreakable bus shelter
Fantastic.
this year.
So this is currently being used very much in forestry, correct?
Yeah, that's the strange thing, you see, because there are, I think it is 1.2 million construction machineries sold in globally every year. Almost all of them comes with normal glass, toughened glass or laminated glass. And in the forest industry, all of them comes with polycarbonate. And I can't explain why.
Yeah.
Because the risk of being injured by something flying at your cabin is quite extensial.
Yep.
And
it's a bit like having a seatbelt, right? You don't think about your seatbelt until you really need it.
Yeah,
Maybe only once or twice in your life you really need it.
Yeah, it's
But you wear it every day.
Almost unnecessary.
Yeah.
Just like a safe screen. You want to come home safe from job. You want to come home safe after a car travel. So my my forecast, my vision of this is that in 10, 15 years, almost all construction machines will have a polycarbonate solution instead of glass.
Fantastic. Bengt, thank you for your support of the event, and thanks for
you.
being here with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
So it's time to wrap up and conclude the event. So I would like to invite back Niklas Nillroth to the stage, and we will move to the other side of the studio and do that. Whew, I got a little bit sweaty when I was hammering on that glass. I didn't know this job included a workout, so I'm really happy about that. So Niklas Nillroth, CECE President, we've had a great day of discussions. We can see throughout the talks a lot of themes developing, definitely digitization, sustainability, a really big topic. Definitely your advocacy for the industry. We can see why it's required. And how you're actually doing it. And I think it's really, really exciting. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to invite you now, it's been a wonderful day, if you could give us your closing comments and thoughts on what's been said.
Yep. Thanks a lot, Malcolm. And I believe it has been a super engaging day. And we have covered a lot of different topics, from the very much long-term strategic ones, financial, getting into new technologies, a lot of digitalization, but also we have got some really hands-on concrete operational demonstrations, and that was a surprise for me as well. I really believe that three areas struck me when I tried to summarize today, and I will do it in short. I think you have mentioned, Malcolm, already two of those. I think digitalization is mentioned in almost every section, even if it wasn't planned, so we come into the area of digitalization. Also, when we talked about leadership, of course, digital tools and the way we manage our customer relations will be more and more important. Sustainability for sure, and we know also the connection in between digital and sustainability through the Next Generation EU, the two key topics for the future, and also the money that we will hope will help us come out of this crisis that we actually are in now. And I believe that it's an optimism in this room, even if we are in a really difficult situation due to COVID right now. The third area, which Malcolm didn't mention, and perhaps this is something that I to some extent read in between the lines of today's Congress, is very much about our industry's image and the attractiveness of our industry. I believe this will be more and more important. We're talking very much about the competence shift, and that's also related to new technologies, but also leadership in our OEMs, our suppliers, but also in our industry association. So those areas, I believe, has been key for this Congress of today. Finally, I would like, of course, to thank all the people that have been engaged, all the speakers that have performed excellently today, of course, all participants all around the world, record high number as mentioned before, of course, the organizing committee, and we have a team from CECE in Brussels, we have a team in CECE in Sweden, but also a team from our event management partner Hansen here in Stockholm, all doing a really great job. And by that, and also to mention our sponsors, also mention KHL again, with that I would like to say a final information about our social media, our newsletter. Please connect, and we can stay connected then also after this Congress. Next time, I really hope that we will meet face to face in person. And till then, stay safe and healthy.
Thank you. Thank you for your words, and it's been a really great day. So just to bring this ship home, it's the end of the live cast now. Many thanks to the audience, for being with us. We had people from many countries, several continents. Very exciting to have such a big group. About twice the size of the normal audience the event has if it's live, because it was digital. We really thank our sponsors who have gone the extra mile for us this year. And thanks again to all our speakers and panelists who were with us here today, and also to the people behind the scenes, CECE, SACE, Hansen Events, Technics Företagens Branschgruppe, and the excellent technical crew here at CECE Hotel. So as a conference host, one of the great things is I get to go into different industries and go into worlds within worlds and find out different things. And one of the things I learned about the construction equipment industry is how important you guys and gals all are. So let's keep building so the world can keep building. Goodbye.